All right, all right, all right. Well, I tell you what, I'm super duper excited about today's RIP call, Remedial Improvement Performance Plan. We have a special treat. We've got Miss Jillian Mills, who is an executive broker with us, and she has created some incredible spreadsheets over the past year and a half. And one of them being pretty much a breakdown when it comes to all of our carriers that we work with every single day, all the nuggets that you need. And again, I'm going to share my screen here in just a moment. But inside the Dreammakers portal and the website through the agent dashboard, you're able to go to the policy comparison chart and you can see a full breakdown of every single carrier, every single product, commissions, and to riders and all these wonderful things. So if you've not seen that yet, make sure that you do that. But without further ado, Jillian Mills, what led you to the passion of wanting to create this carrier breakdown of a policy? Hey, do I have you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I gotcha. Yes, so tell me this, what really led to the passion of you wanting to physically create this policy comparison chart?
So one thing I talked to my coach a lot about whenever I first started with NASB is not knowing everything. And Adrian kept saying, it's okay not to know everything, but I felt like I couldn't remember all the things that I needed to know. And so that led to creating a tool that I could use on a daily basis so that I could find the answer if I wasn't able to get up with someone for an in and up, or if I just needed to know something to compare policies. And so it was just really about creating a tool for myself so that I was more confident in the home, essentially.
Amen. Well, we've got the, we're going to have the pretty much the PowerPoint here that you created for all of us. Because again, when it comes to RIP, this is very content driven, not about mindset. When it comes to agents, it's about, look, if we can give you these powerful nuggets that you can go out on the field and be completely unstoppable, then that's what we want to do and prepare you for every single Tuesday morning. So here we go, guys, for the next 27 minutes. Jillian, take us away with the carrier knowledge. Here we go.
Perfect. Okay, so first up, strategy. That is probably the most important thing whenever it comes to knowledge is your strategy behind your business. So one of the charts on the NASB website talks about how to track your business, which carriers count on issue, which carriers count on first payment, and how much percent they count. So Ashley and I are currently partnering with Home Office to ensure that going forward, chargebacks will no longer count against our business, and carriers will count 50 or 75%. But that's a strategy that you would need to know and use and implement that workbook or that spreadsheet going forward. But I'm all about strategy. That's what Adrian always says about me, is that I'm very strategic. So whenever it comes to carrier knowledge, that's part of that strategy. It's knowing who to go with and when, and what they're accepting, what they're not accepting. And we all want to make more money. So which carrier to go with to make more money, right? So as we go to the first slide for AIG, so they have had some pretty big changes here with their simplified issue whole life. AIG was always a carrier we would go to with a 2-year wait, pretty much. They were the carrier for that. And so now on their simplified issue whole life, you can see on this slide where they're going to accept stage 1 cancers. Like, seriously, that's amazing. And so I've listed those here. We run into a lot of cancers. Sometimes, unfortunately, our clients, have partnered with their doctors and it's past stage 1, but we do run into a lot of stage 1 cancers. And the biggest one that I've seen is the melanoma on here. A lot of carriers don't accept melanoma, kidney cancer, prostate cancer. We see that a lot. So this is a game changer when it comes to stage 1 cancers. The other thing on this slide that I wanted to highlight is AIG's commission bonus. I know that this was part of the newsletter that I created and sent out, but so this bonus pays as you hit the tiers. And so, for example, you'll see tier 1, $25 bonus for one paid simplified issue whole life application. And so we all know AIG pays on Wednesdays. And so if the policy payment for the client comes out on a Friday, then you'll get paid that $25 the following Wednesday. And as soon as you hit the 3 as soon as you hit the 3 paid applications, then you'll get that $250. So this should be a no-brainer for everybody. If you want to make an extra $2,500, write their new simplified issue whole life. Set a goal. Maybe you want to write 3 of these per month, because they do have to be fairly healthy. But who doesn't want to make that extra bonus? So this should be one that we're absolutely focusing on to make additional commission, right, Ashley?
Absolutely. And I feel like some people are intimidated by the new AIG SIWL day one coverage application. Tell me how simple this really is.
So actually on the Guardians team, Kat May has written a couple of these, and she highlighted this for us on one of our conference calls recently with our team. And she says that it's fairly easy to do. One thing I would point out is that you have to do this one first before any other tries. So, you don't want to get a decline from Omaha and then pivot to AIG, because on this next slide, they will be declined if they were declined for insurance within 12 months. So you definitely don't want to hit up another carrier, get a decline, and then go to AIG, because then they will be declined, or that could mess with the contestability period for your client. So just keep that in mind. A couple other things, they decline for insulin use. So any diabetic on insulin is an automatic decline, unfortunately. So keep an eye on that. Some just different things that are useful to know is they accept felonies beyond 2 years. Tobacco use, there's a lot of combinations that they don't like with tobacco use. So angina with tobacco use, they don't accept. Coronary artery disease. Adrian and I unfortunately had a client recently pass away last year with coronary artery disease. But with tobacco, they won't accept that. Heart attack in combination with tobacco. So I don't know if you can zoom in on this, Ashley, but I'll give you an example here. Under heart medical TIA, there's that shows heart attack over 24 months, non-tobacco use would be level. Same thing with coronary artery disease. How many of our carriers do not accept coronary artery disease? But if they're non-tobacco and it's been more than 24 months, that's a level death benefit. And stent, same thing, 24 months. If they're non-tobacco, then they can get coverage with this carrier. So there's a lot of tobacco combinations here. This underwriting chart, you should have it in your email. If not, you can get it straight from AIG. You can also, I call all the carriers on a consistent basis asking, about persistency, which I'll be rolling some of that out in the coming weeks. But if you have a question about underwriting, call the carrier and ask them. This is very different whenever it comes to the tobacco use. For having some carriers accept these diagnoses and some declining them completely, but AIG has done this combination. So I would suggest everyone kind of look through this and familiarize yourself, especially with the coronary artery disease. That's a huge one. Absolutely. Another thing, bipolar depression, sometimes we'll see that. It's an automatic graded. And so, with that, we would end up going to the guaranteed issue. So tobacco combinations, remember that for AIG. The other thing on here too is the AFib without any medications. So I've had people with AFib, that can't get approved because they're on a specific medication. AIG simplified issue will approve AFib if they're on the right medications. And so that's a huge call out too. You'll run into clients and they'll say, yeah, I have AFib, and we know the carriers that we can't go with because of Eliquis or whatever medication they're on for that AFib. Well, they need to be on the medication to stay healthy, to get coverage with the AIG simplified issue whole life, which is very different than some of our other carriers. And then the last bullet point is the brain aneurysm without repair surgery. So if they've had the repair surgery on the brain aneurysm, they can still get day one coverage with this AIG product. So those are some huge call outs that are very different from any of our other carriers. I mean, this is a game changer, don't you think, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely. And, just kind of going back to tobacco, because when it comes to tobacco with COPD, so if you've got a client, and typically sometimes tobacco is one of the catalysts to physically allowing somebody to have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, what are those two carriers that don't allow if somebody's using tobacco and then also has COPD? I believe it's Liberty Bankers, correct? And then the second one that does not, that completely declines it is, was it Foresters? Is that right? I know Liberty for sure. Who's that second
And now
one?
Transamerica will decline as well.
Oh, I know. And I think, guys, just a heads up for everybody, February 11th is when the new application for Transamerica goes into existence. So we just had somebody yesterday that was the only carrier they could go with was Transamerica, because they had COPD and then neuropathy, but it was with metformin. So good gracious, that's the only carrier that he could go with. So if I told him, I said, don't you wait. I said, because after pretty much within a few days, you have nobody, legit. So let's really make sure that we're hopping on that. Also with AFib, one of the best carriers when it comes to AFib with or without medications is going to be Foresters. So, there's these, carriers, and you do want to have this arsenal and this armor when you're looking at these carriers. For example, everybody knows rural neighbors, diabetic neuropathy, whether it's insulin or metformin, doesn't matter. That's our go-to carrier with rural neighbors. But you've got to be really careful. If you're a brand new agent, especially in your first 90 days, you should be doing it in and up in every single house. Why? Because you're going to be learning at the virtual boot camp when Jillian goes into further depth about persistency and placement and how it affects you. The last thing you want to do is completely getting decline after decline after decline, and then you just keep running down the list when it actually is hurting you with your placement ratios, and then they terminate you from that carrier. So let's go next to Transamerica. Again, it's our new, it's not a new product, but it's not a new carrier, but we do have a new product with Transamerica. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just want to preface this. Like you said, February 11th is when this new application will go into effect. And there is a webinar today at 2 p.m. I think Jordan mentioned it on the previous call. I had signed up for it last week, but anyone that has time to take it or watch it today, that's great. If not, hopefully it'll be recorded. I'm hoping to get more clarity around some of these, decline or graded conditions that they're saying, could potentially be approved with exercise. I know that exercise is mentioned on the underwriting guide, but it's not specific, like Jordan said. And so it's just important to kind of know what we're dealing with whenever, we don't want to just throw up against the wall and say, hey, let's just apply with congestive heart failure and they work out 3 times a week. So especially with contestability, it's so funny that Jordan spoke on that this morning, because I've been having that conversation with Samantha Bowman and Adrian recently about, the gray area of underwriting and how that could affect our clients in the contestability period. So today at 2, I should have more answers around that. It is interesting. So they automatically decline if they have something upcoming that any type of surgery or procedure that needs general anesthesia. And sometimes that could be dental. So you have to keep that in mind. Any diabetic coma in the past is an automatic decline. This one is very interesting, I thought. So because of the anti-money laundering guidelines, they will not accept any insured owner or payer that works in the cannabis related industry. So I thought that was very interesting. I've not seen that before, but also alcoholism or illegal drug use within the past 2 years. So some carriers ask about that, but there's different look back times. And so, it's important. Those are just some highlights and some call outs on this guide to the right. So this is where I think that, hopefully we'll get some clarification coming up shortly. So any diabetes is going to be standard, period. So if you have a client that has diabetes ever diagnosed at all, it's going to be standard instead of preferred. That is not gestational, which is pregnancy or diabetes during your pregnancy. COPD on this chart, which is directly from Transamerica, it says graded. Obviously, Transamerica's graded product is not one that we would pick first, but again, today, hopefully we'll find out more information about, what that looks like as far as, going forward with exercise and things of that nature. Underneath decision on the top right, it does say subject to all other factors. And I think that's why this isn't an end all be all whenever it comes to exercise. But congestive heart failure is also listed on here as graded. And so that's why today's, webinar is going to be so important to get some more answers. I have called Transamerica, and their underwriters have not even been trained on the new products yet as of a couple days ago. So I couldn't get those answers before this Zoom, but we will have them. But I always say if there's a gray area, go by the underwriting guide, and this is the underwriting guide. A couple other things to look at on here. So some carriers are pretty, strict on felonies. Some are, only care if they've been or if they're currently incarcerated. So they're pretty strict as far as convicted of a felony. So they really can only get preferred coverage with Transamerica now if it's been 10 years or more on the felony. If it's been 5 to 10 years, they can be approved for standard. Anything within the past 5 years as far as a felony goes. And let's face it, I've run into that all the time. So this would not be your go-to carrier in that instance. There's a couple other things on here as far as reckless driving, DUI. I know that those questions are typically for term products. We'll see them on whole life, but they're much more significant on some of our term products and looking at driving record. But on this, whole life plan, again, over 5 years for any reckless driving, which would be, DUI, DWI, those types of things. Same with drug use. It's standard up to 10 years. After 10 years, they could get preferred. So they're really strict on, any type of alcohol, drug abuse, any trouble with the law, any driving infractions. This may not be your go-to carrier whenever it comes to that. And again, this kind of was our bread and butter when it came, like Michaela said earlier on the call, to some underwriting. This was our first choice, and now we're going to have to pivot, as Ross would say in Friends. So this is kind of a game changer as far as Transamerica, don't you think, Ashley?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Especially the fact of, let me just reiterate, after February 11th, anybody that has diabetes, okay, they will still accept the neuropathy, but it will still be standard. So whether or not, again, on the webinar today, whether it's insulin with neuropathy, and then I think another great question that we should ask, especially today, is can we have multiple yeses as standard? Okay, because I know that with Transamerica, if you have one yes at standard, they'll automatically decline you, right? So I think that's a great question to ask. Let's talk about how we get paid, right? We've got all these carriers. We just added another one. A lot of the partners are already getting contracted with Prosperity. We apologize. There was just, a couple of little contracting challenges there with that new carrier, but Prosperity is going to be a phenomenal carrier as well. So once we get that bad boy and the whole company contracted, we'll obviously do another huge carrier nugget on that one. So let's talk about how we get paid with some of these carriers. Jillian.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is kind of, I feel like everyone knows some of this just because, you're out there writing business, you're getting deposits every day, hopefully. But it's important to, whenever you're talking about strategy, to kind of sprinkle in a little of each of these. So, we unfortunately, we need to save for a rainy day. We unfortunately don't have sick time or things of that nature. There's so many other benefits to this business, and we don't really need that. But it's important to plan for the rainy day. So if you have, the choice between writing Aetna and Rural Neighbors, for example, and you've written a lot of Rural Neighbors and you've gotten paid on it, you might want to throw in an Aetna because they're the ones that are going to pay you on the 3rd of next month. And, who knows, you might have a sick child or you might be dealing with an illness. So you want to kind of be strategic and not only write carriers that pay you on approval. So we all know, America pays quickly. Columbian Financial Group is one of my favorites, and it has been for a while. They pay so fast. If I write an app with them in the morning before noon, I'm usually paid when I wake up in the morning. The deposit is in there, which is so great. but it's just important to be strategic about your commissions. And even though we all want to get paid right away, it's, and even with graded products. So for example, Gerber typically pays as the client pays. And so when you run into someone that's just, not getting day one coverage and you're looking at Great Western or Gerber or AIG, it's nice to have Gerber deposit money every single month into your account. You're not getting that 9-month advance all at once, but that's the strategy that I'm talking about, especially if you're still learning how to be financially responsible as a broker and manage your money properly. I mean, that's something that we all, can really kind of refocus on as brokers, especially if you're coming from a W-2 job. You got the same amount of money every single week, right? You put the same amount of money into your 401k because your job helps you out with that, right? Or you had a healthcare savings plan. And so you really have to be in charge. Like, this is financial freedom, but it comes with, a lot of responsibility. And so taking that responsibility and looking at the strategy of when you get paid is very important. So even though Gerber, sometimes is less commission, or always is less commission than some of our other graded carriers, that's still an important one to throw in, especially because a lot of times, depending on their age and gender, Gerber can beat the pants off of some of our other 2-year wait plans. So I would suggest throwing some of those, some Gerbers in here and there, just so you know that you're getting something every single month, especially if you're newer, or even if you're not and you've struggled with managing your money and saving for the future and all of those types of things. It's really important to be strategic about which carriers pay you and when, and having what you need for later. So I would absolutely suggest writing carriers on that come out first draft if you have the option between the two.
Amen. Absolutely. And, again, I'm just going to be very blunt. When it comes to graded, I always love AIG and Great Western. Those are like the top two. Gerber's that third option. We just don't see a lot of Gerber. Let me ask you this. What's the top carrier that doesn't have, or they might have a cap when it comes to commissions? What's that top carrier that has an insane cap when it comes to the commissions?
Oh gosh. So Rural Neighbors, I believe, has a really high cap. So this is why I have the charts, because it's hard for me to remember these things. But Columbian has, we all know Mutual of Omaha has 1,000. So most of them are more than that. I think Great Western is 1,500 now. I want to say,
Aetna was like 3,500 or something like that.
They have a big one. Foresters is big. I have a client, that I've worked with for several years that we had written a Foresters on, and their commission was 3,500 as well, just for one application. But the other thing too is, again, strategy. If you need, if you write a big app and you can go with anybody, Rural Neighbors Jet is a good option, but they may cap you, but then you still get, after maybe you get 5 months of commission up front, but then month 6 through 12, you're getting that, 70, 75%, that, will continue. So even though they may cap you and you don't get the full 9 months, sometimes that's okay. You don't want everything all up front all the time. So.
Yeah. And so we've got about 5 minutes left. Let's quickly go into the term and, what products to go to when it comes to term.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the things that I had to learn early on. I'm about to hit 4 years with NASB here shortly. And I had run into a client who was dead set on term. He wanted term for him and his wife, nothing else. And, sometimes in our presentation, we really end up focusing so much on whole life. We don't ever want to talk ourselves out of a sale. And so I think it's really important to know who you're dealing with, and during that connection, and once you find out about what they have and what their needs are, it's okay to sell term if that's what they believe in. They may have a term that increases every 5 years or every year, or they're at the end of their term and it's about to jump astronomically. And so I just thought that this was very important because, again, you can sell term. It's okay to sell term. So just a couple comparisons that I thought were interesting to begin with. If you have a 15, 20, or 30-year term, that's going to be 75% with Omaha, and it starts at 70 with Rural Neighbors. But 10-year terms drop to 55% commission with Omaha. So, anytime I have somebody, I'm like pushing the 15-year term, or I'm going to jump to a jet. All TLE has accelerated underwriting. The jet has accelerated under age 50, but also for under age 60, 250,000. So it's based, anything over age 60 is going to be fully underwritten. I have one going on right now. She's going to the doctor's office and meeting someone to go through, the pee in a cup and prick your finger and things of that nature. Death benefits. Jet definitely has higher death benefits. The maximums are less with with the TLE, Term Life Express, but they also offer the 30-year return of premium. So they get every penny back that they've paid in at the end of 30 years, or they have paid up term insurance to age 100. So if they live to age 101, sorry, but that's not happening a whole lot these days. Again, terminal illness accelerated is a little bit different on each product, so that's something to consider when you're with your client. Royal has a better acceleration of 90%, but Omaha is 80% across the board, where critical illness drops to 25% with the jet. So these are just things that I, again, was not remembering every day in my mind if I'm sitting with somebody for term products. So I had to make a chart to go, to remind me. Minimum death benefit with TLE is 25,000, but the minimum with jet is going to be 50. So again, if you're looking if you're with a budget friend, someone that is on a strict budget, then you may have to go Term Life Express and start at 25,000 rather than a jet, because they're going to start at 50,000.
And then absolutely. And let's wrap it up with the no height and weight chart. So where do we go for those carriers that have somebody that you might meet that, hey, look, they might be 5'1" and they're 340 pounds. So what carrier do we go to?
Yeah. So for the purposes of this call, I compared Aetna and Rural Neighbors. Another great one is Great Western. So, but for Rural Neighbors and Aetna, so comparing those two companies that will not ask anything about height and weight, obviously Aetna is going to be a better carrier over the age from 76 basically and up, because they're not going to cut commissions. Rural Neighbors after the age of starting at 76 is going to cut your commission down. So, but if they're younger than that, they're going to pay on approval, whereas Aetna pays on first draft. So if you need fast money, it might be better to go with Rural Neighbors. They don't offer accidental, as we all know, and Aetna will offer that. But it has to be issue age of 70 and under. So if you run into a 75-year-old, it's not going to make any difference. And since Royal doesn't cut commission until age 76, then in that situation, you might, still go Royal. Terminal illness accelerated is higher with Rural Neighbors, just to compare. There's no nursing home accelerated benefit with Aetna, where Rural Neighbors does have that. Although Rural Neighbors minimum is 7,000 and Aetna's is 2. So, just comparing those like products and who to go with, there's so many different things that we could go over as far as carriers and comparisons, and maybe we'll have, Great Western comparing with them on the next Zoom. But height and weight definitely are Aetna and Rural Neighbors are the two main go-tos.
Amen. Well, I don't know about y'all, but seriously, this has been epic. And I know we could talk for hours about carrier nuggets and who to go to for this, but I can tell you one thing is that be ready for the virtual boot camp, because you're going to hear a lot more nuggets from Miss Jillian, especially about the placement persistency. We're going to go a little bit more into depth, understanding the terminal illness riders, why and what they are, because I think it's super duper important. So other than that, folks, have an incredible day. Thank you so much, Jillian. Phenomenal job. Let's make it a great day. Let's go.